Soon tiring of the extreme physical exertion, Rady twisted away from the fight and, clasping her hand behind her head, sought a moment of personal refuge. Dewey and Jenny soon joined her, leaving Elizabeth zealously jumping up and down, earnestly enjoying the shallow, muddy water. Rady, Jenny decided, after a quick cursory examination, was a pretty girl. She had a small, pointed face with large, dark eyes, reflecting a casual, accepting nature that studied the environment methodically. Her prominent eyes, framed by fine eyebrows, accentuated a sweetly agreeable expression that encouraged familiarity. Jenny knew her own face wasn't like that. Hers changed, as her father had observed, with every tempestuous blow of the wind. Frustrated, it presented a decidedly cross outlook. However, today she resolved to be ever so delicately charming and polite. Collapsing under a large boulder, she began conversationally. "Indian children used to come play here years ago. Creek Indians, I think. They had a village not far from Dewey's house. We've found lots of flint rocks and arrowheads around there. This is Anawake Creek," she continued, named for the Indian family that lived here when the first white explorers came through. "Anawake means cow people," Dewey added, "and there were quite a few lodges and teepees set up to support grazing the livestock. Used to be called Coweta Town, but nobody remembers the exact Indian name anymore. You know, Indians don't live very long on one particular spot. They thought it best to pull up stakes every few years, burn every leftover trace of their presence, and move on to a new unused area. Grandpa Favors remembers a huge conclave, Octahotalofa, up near where Soundtown is today." "Yes," Jenny chumped in, "the Creeks and the Cherokees used Buzzard's Roost as a sort of boundary marker, and they had lots of treaty talks and meetings there. They called it Sulagaga, and it marked the start of the main Indian trail west to Alabama. A lot of Indian traders and government scouts would use the island as a reference point and meeting place. In the early part of the 1800s, Buzzard's Roost and Rock Mountain were about the only distinguishable reference points around here. We've had picnics at Rock Mountain," Rady piped in. "It's a fun place. A giant mountain made out of one great granite rock. Takes almost an hour to scale it." "I hope to see it someday," Dewey answered. "Perhaps we can come visit you in the city and picnic right smack on top of it." "I don't see why not," Rady returned. "My favorite story is about the Princess Anawake," Jenny announced, flicking some pine straw with a stick. "Lots of people think she's buried right near our farm in that large mound just up from the river. The story says she fell in love with a huge red-haired Scottish trader. McDoherty, I think, was his name. Stories say he was over 6'4" and weighed some 235 pounds. Well," Jenny continued, "he wasn't one for hanging around one place for very long. After he left, it wasn't long before the princess was with child. When the baby was born, she was cast out of her village, forced to spend the rest of her days traipsing up and down the Chattahoochee, trying to find her one true love. She found him several times, and she'd stay with him for a while, but then he'd off and disappear again just out of the blue. One night when they were separated, she was caught in a violent thunderstorm. Must have become confused and blown into the river, 'cause she and the baby showed up drowned right here at the foot of Campbellton some days later. Her own folks took her back and buried her, but the Indians say she never rested. Her spirit's been roaming up and out for darn near 100 years or so, roaming the hillsides in search of her handsome Scotsman." "Wow," Lizzie wailed, glancing about her. "It's for certain. Lots of Indian ghosts wander these hills. You can hear 'em screaming and moaning all the time. It's an exciting place to live," added Dewey. My goodness, the petite visitors chimed in, visibly alarmed. Are there still Indians around? No, answered Jenny, seeking to impress the newcomers with her considerable knowledge. They were sent off 100 years ago, back before the war. In 1821, they signed the Treaty of Indian Springs, promising to cede most all their land to the white man. Can't say for sure what they got in return. 'Tweren't much, I reckon. Campbellton sprung up sometime after that, about 1825. Most were happy to move on to freer lands, but many weren't too pleased at the white man's encroachments. There was a bunch of Cherokee warriors who refused to go with the migration to Oklahoma. They finally hunted them down, and there was some big massacre up near Buzzard's Roost. You have to be careful not to disturb any ancient burial grounds or old campsites around here. Stirs up spirits that ain't too much pleased to be disturbed. Folks is forever seeing ghosts and things. One band of Injuns is seen all the time floating up and down the Chattahoochee. 2 or 3 canoes full of real painted warriors. Scary like all get out. Jenny thought she noticed Rady's thin chin bristle at her embellishment and elevate itself slightly as if preparing a challenge to the country girl's storytelling. But slicing through Jenny's posturing, Dewey put in, "Thank you, Miss Know-It-All. I had no idea you were such an outstanding student of history, and I'm sure Mr. Stokes isn't aware of your scholarship either. Perhaps if you'd enlightened our history class instead of sleeping and daydreaming, we might have all fared better academically this year." Blushing at her extravagance, Jenny excused her enthusiasm. "I've heard Indian stories since childhood. I suppose they're just part of me by now. You don't live here long without picking up a lot of old stories." "Yes, it's quite an interesting place. We don't hear much about the country except for plantations and magnolias and pretty girls in long, puffy dresses," Rady began. "I'm sure they're not as interesting as the Indians, from the gist of all our families talking at home. You must tell me all about things here in the country, so when we go home, I can frighten all our friends with fascinating parlor talk." Listening to Rady's proper discourse, Jenny wondered if she had really been impressed by her knowledge or just thought her a show-off. Jenny herself was anxious to hear of life in Atlanta, but more important things pressed on her pubescent mind at the moment. "Now, Dewey," she suddenly asked pointedly, "I'm intent on floating a raft this year. Do you really think it's possible to build one from pine trees and packing crates?" As she turned to confront the young lad, she faced the impish deviltry of the younger guest, who lavishly spit out a mouthful of creek water directly into Jenny's face and commenced a giddy laughter. The entire group was amused, although the older sister grimaced, shock first at her young sister's impetuosity. Concerned about Jenny's potential response, she studied the tall country girl's face. After composing herself in the confusion, Jenny stared forcefully into the demon's face. Elizabeth, still reeling innocently, expected acknowledgment of her great joke. Surprisingly even to Jenny herself, the violated party drawled, "I have killed for less than that, young heathen. What demon possessed you to venture so bold a move?" A haughty, self-affecting smile was all that answered. Rady, coming to Jennifer's aid, scolded, "Elizabeth, how could you? Apologize to Jenny this instant," she commanded. "I'm sorry," Liz offered meekly, rocking side to side, not quite understanding her companion's displeasure. But Jenny, always one to appreciate a funny stunt, soon began to snicker. The group soon giggled closer together, and as they began to get comfortable with each other,